Hello friend, thanks for joining me for another book chat. Today let's spend a few minutes with Circe by Madeline Miller. This book was originally published back in 2018 and it is about Circe, the character from the Odyssey, so a retelling of her story. And I previously read Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller and just loved it. I will link to that chat down in the details below. And I just love these retellings of myths. And I also read the Penelopiad by Margaret Atwood a while back, and which was a retelling of the Odyssey from the point of view of Penelope. But this one's obviously about Circe, the character from the Odyssey. She's a somewhat minor character in the Odyssey from what I understand. But in this book, she is the star of the show. I found myself wondering what was going to happen next with her because I didn't really know her story that well from the Odyssey. And so I'm going to be careful in this chat to not give away anything that I think would detract from a first-time reader's experience with this character, even though this character is many, many, many centuries old. We don't know necessarily how this story, particular fictionalized account, is going to go, so I will be careful with that. So, Circe is the daughter of the sun god Helios and the nymph Perse. So she herself is divine, but she doesn't have much divine power. And she's not really well loved by her parents at all, or the other gods and goddesses and divinities in the community where she lives. As a matter of fact, her parents flat out consider her really a disappointment. She's not considered pretty, and her voice is thought harsh. We find out later that it's still pleasing to mortals, but to the divine, it rings as a bit harsh. So she's really a lonely child, really an unloved child, and a lonely young woman. Now, her uncle, Circe's one of the Titans, so she's one of that group of the Greek gods. Her uncle, also a Titan, was Prometheus, the Titan who was punished by the gods for giving fire to humans. He got punished for that very gravely. The gods are taking pleasure in tormenting him for what he has done, but Circe takes pity on him. And she comforts him. She tries to comfort him. She sort of takes from him a curiosity also about the mortal world and about mortals. And so she has a different view of them. She sort of shares this view of mortals with her uncle rather than her father and her siblings and those around her. Eventually, though, she's wandering, so she's lonely, like I said, so she's wandering around the mortal realm, and she meets this young man, a fisherman, a very common sort of fisherman in Greece, and his name is Glaucus, and she goes back daily, to get to know him better, and ultimately falls hopelessly in love with him. But she realizes that she could maybe transform him into something else so that she could be with him. So speaking of that, she doesn't, as I mentioned earlier, she doesn't have much divine power, as I've mentioned. But what she does have is a curiosity about the natural world around her. The natural world, she realizes, has its own divinity, a sort of different type of divinity, and she's starting to learn how to access that. So yes, in essence, she does become a witch. And so she decides to transform Glaucus into a divinity, thinking this is going to help her get what she wants. Well, it doesn't. What it does is get her exiled to an island to live alone forever, ultimately. So, an interesting part of the story here, I think, was the divine world and how it's portrayed in this book. Particularly, there's this rivalry between the Titans, which are an older set of gods, of which Circe belongs. Helios, her father, was a Titan. Prometheus, her uncle, was a Titan. But then there's the Olympian gods, right, like Zeus and Athena. And so right now in time, the Olympians are the ones who have the power. So Zeus doesn't want anyone accessing the powers of the natural world, because this is something, accessing this sort of divinity of things in the world, like plants, is something even mortals could learn to do, and Zeus doesn't want that to happen. So he is furious that Circe has developed this skill to make Glaucus into a divine. So as punishment, in order to avoid conflict between the Titans and the Olympians, which has happened in the past, Helios and Zeus agree to not kill Circe, but to exile her to this island. So that's how she winds up there. She doesn't really seem to care all that much, because, she was already unloved by her family and her community, so she was already basically alone, although she was living with others. There's a quote here where she says, "You threw me to the crows, but it turns out I prefer them to you." She's saying this, I believe, to her father. On this island alone, she's got some animals that befriend her, or she befriends them, one of whom is a lion who she loves very much. And she lives there, spending her time among her animal friends, as well, her lion and others, as well as expanding, her skills in magic. Eventually, a ship of sailors come along the island, and they're surprised to find this woman living on this island by herself among these riches, because Circe was actually very well provided for on this island. So she's fascinated by these soldiers, and she rolls out the red carpet of hospitality for them. Remember, now, she's always been fascinated by mortals, and she thinks well of them because of her experience with Glaucus. This does not go the same way, though, with these soldiers. Ultimately, either for them or for her or for them, it ends in assault and violence. Ultimately, she transformed to protect herself, or to save herself, actually. She transforms the soldiers into pigs, which was their true nature. This spell she casts transforms a person into their true nature. She has used this before. This is not the first time she used this, and I won't go into what happened there, but it had dire consequences for many, many years afterwards when she used this power previously. But anyway, after this encounter, she's no longer so trustworthy with whatever sailors happen to come along. So as sailors come on to her island, she basically just transforms them into pigs. Ultimately, though, as we knew would happen, because this is a retelling of the Circe from the Odyssey, Odysseus does show up on her island with his sailors, and she does transform them all into pigs, with the exception of Odysseus. And whether he uses his trickery, he's known as a trickster, to get her to not transform him or what, but she doesn't transform him, and they actually form a bond and a connection. And it is here that her transformation really, really takes off. So I won't give the rest of that plot away. Let's just talk about some key thoughts and themes that I took away from the book now from here on out, so that I don't spoil the rest. Family and community rejection is a big theme here. Circe has to come to terms with the fact that she's not loved by her family, and that she has been rejected by her community. However, the cool thing about Circe is she does not let this dominate her life. This does not become her dominant narrative. She pushes past that and, like I mentioned, transforms herself into something else. Then another theme here is healthy love versus unhealthy love. Circe herself, there's other examples in the book, but Circe herself experiences both healthy and unhealthy throughout the course of the book. Her love for Glaucus turned out to be unhealthy, as she's trying to make him into what she wants, or what she thinks she needs to have him be. But I'd say her love for Odysseus was healthy. She knows he's going to ultimately have to leave, which we know from this Odyssey story. So she knows that from the beginning. She does try to delay it, but I think she has a pretty healthy relationship with Odysseus. And then another big theme I thought was, what does it mean to be favored by gods? I thought about this a lot. The gods are not reflected very well here. They're not portrayed as very nice people or beings. the gods are either with the relationship of the gods with each other, as well as their relationship with the mortal world. This all portrayed very interestingly, and I did enjoy that a lot. They do not come across very well, though, as I mentioned. If you think more, though, about someone favored by gods, I thought about this some, like especially like Odysseus and others. Odysseus is favored by Athena. You know, a lot of times if you're mortal, you're favored by gods, meaning a path is being opened for you. You might think that that's you doing all that, right? And I think that mortals do this as well when others help them to succeed, but yet they take all the credit for it. And I thought that was sort of a fascinating sort of way to portray this in some cases. Finally, the ultimate theme, I think, of the book was transformation. And there's a quote here where Circe says, "How can I live on beneath such a burden of doom? I rise then and go to my herbs. I create something. I transform something." I love that quote. You know, she transforms things. This is how she sort of makes her mark. She's making her world better. And I love that. There's another part of the book, I didn't write down the quote, but it's, fix what you can. Like if you find something wrong, fix that in the world. Whatever little thing it might be trash on the street that you could put in a nearby trash can. Is fixing something, right? I thought that was really cool. Circe learns a little bit about divine power in everything, as I mentioned, and how to harness that as a way to transform. And, she eventually meets Daedalus in the book, and Daedalus gives her a loom. And her favorite part about weaving, creating, is actually making the dyes. And I thought that was really cool, too. Circe's biggest transformation, though, ultimately is herself. I think we're used to hearing stories where there's a mortal person who, through perseverance, becomes semi-divine. This story, though, Circe's story, is the other way. A divine person, through perseverance and hard work, becomes human, more human. So I thought that was really cool. And I'll close the chat there, I think. I just love this. I love these stories, as I mentioned, of retelling of myths. And I have another one coming up, Lavinia by Ursula K. Le Guin. So I'll have that coming up, hopefully, in the next few months. But my next chat is actually going to be The Vicar of Wakefield by Oliver Goldsmith, which I have finished. And I will have a chat on this coming up soon. So until next time, take care.